Hey there, folks. Welcome back to the Executive Home Inspections YouTube channel. Today, we've got an exciting topic to dive into, especially if you're in the process of selling your home or consider selling it in the near future. Today, we're going to talk about one of the most crucial steps in the selling process. That is preparing your home for the home inspection day. Home inspections can be a make or break moment for potential buyers. They want to be sure they're investing their hard-earned money into a property that's safe, sound, and free from unexpected surprises. It's crucial to put your best foot forward during this critical stage of the process. In today's video, we're going to guide you through the process of preparing your home for the home inspection day. But before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscription button and ring that notification bell so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. All right, let's get started. So we're going through the seller's home inspection day. This is basically helping them prepare for the inspection to help it go smoothly and have a positive outcome. So pretty much it's best for the seller not to be there during the inspection. And that's because buyers often feel uncomfortable when the seller is present. It can be a bit awkward, and sometimes that tension kind of seeps into the actual transaction. Just better not to have that stress or tension at all. So your realtor should have let you know that you should be gone for the entire inspection. Now that's generally about 3 to 4 hours, depending on the property. Apartment condos, usually about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Townhouses and row houses, usually about 2 to 2.5 hours. Average size home is about 3 to 4 hours, so that kind of gives you a general ballpark. If it's going to be longer, the realtor will obviously let you know. Now, you should try to leave about 15 to 30 minutes prior to the inspection time. Now, there's a couple of reasons for this. One is sometimes the home inspector will be there early, or the potential buyer will be there early. So you just kind of want to be gone by then. The other reason is if you forget something and you have to come back, you got time. You've given yourself a buffer, right? Now, when you're not there for the inspection, it allows the inspector to focus on the actual inspection and talk freely with a potential buyer. So that way, there could be a free interaction between the buyer and the inspector, and generally puts everyone more at ease and helps things go smoother. Now, you're going to want to have all the utilities turned on. The water, the power, the gas, they all need to be on for the inspection to go ahead. If they're not on, the inspection will have to be rescheduled, and the reschedule fee is usually paid by you, the seller. Now, the main water valve and shutoff valves need to be on unless there's a leak. Obviously, if there's a leak, you're going to leave that valve shut off. But you want to have the valves on for the toilets and for the sinks. Now, there is an exception, and that's going to be your outside taps or your hose bibs, like your connection for your garden hose. Those are normally shut off in the wintertime, and that's obviously something that the inspector would expect to see, right? Now, in the electrical, the main breakers and all the breakers in the sub-panels should be turned on if they're in use. If they are off, the inspector will leave them turned off. He's not going to turn them on in case they're off for a reason, if there's a problem with the system. Gas valves, they also need to be turned on for heaters, hot water tanks, any appliance that uses gas, such as gas fireplaces. Pilot lights also need to be turned on as well. So, for example, for most gas fireplaces have a pilot light. That needs to be turned on. The inspector's not going to turn that on either. Now, the reason all this stuff needs to be on is because the home inspector needs to test all of these different systems. And if they're not on, they can't be tested, and that usually involves a reinspection. Now, let's talk a couple of minutes about accessibility. Now, you're going to want to ensure that all areas of your home are accessible for the inspection. One of the prime ones is the attic. Now, the attic is usually in a closet somewhere, and all of the stuff that's in the closet needs to be cleared away so that the inspector can bring his ladder in there and get into the attic access. So you're going to need to move clothes and boxes and stuff. The other thing is sometimes when the attic access is opened, there's insulation or debris that falls into the house, And obviously you don't want that on your clothes if they're underneath the attic access. Now, most people don't actually ever open their attic access, so it's a good idea to test it to make sure it actually opens. Quite often I'll run into the attic accesses that have been painted shut. Sometimes they're nailed shut or they have screws in them. This can make it difficult or impossible for the access to be opened, and that portion of the inspection then can't be done. Water main needs to be accessible. The inspector needs to look at the water main. Electrical panels, sub-panels obviously need to be accessible as well. Furnaces in the house and the garage, they need to be made accessible, clear the stuff from around them. The water heater, obviously. Now the sump pump, most people usually forget about the sump pump because it's under the stairs or in a generally inaccessible area. So you need to move all of the storage off of that, make sure there's enough room for the inspector to get in there, remove the cover, test the sump pump, and put the cover back on. Now, on newer properties, you may have a backwater valve or a backflow preventer. That obviously needs to be accessible for the inspection as well. I do see sometimes where home builders have unfortunately put them under hot water tanks or furnaces or under a step. Obviously, those aren't going to be accessible at the time of the inspection. The other thing is I quite often see concrete over top of them. Even though it's a thin layer, the inspector isn't going to break out the hammer and chisel to get that cover off. That's something that you're responsible for. Obviously, basement and crawl spaces need to be accessible, storage areas. Just generally move any obstacles that could get in the way of the inspection. Now, access for the entire property, including outbuildings or detached structures, needs to be done. If you have a detached garage, obviously that's going to need to be inspected. Unlock gates, provide any keys that are necessary. So if there are keys that are needed for things, leave them on the kitchen counter or on the kitchen table and label them so that the inspector and the realtor know what they're for. That also includes any keys for the electrical panels. Now, not very often that electrical panels are locked, but sometimes they are. So it's a good idea to have those keys readily available as well. Now, pets are another thing that needs to be addressed. You should arrange for your pets to be gone or caged up during the inspection. Now, this ensures the safety for everyone, including the pets, and make sure there's no distractions. I've run into this a few times where the realtor opens the door and the cat or the dog bolts and they're gone. Then we're trying to get the animal back into the home safely. There's a couple of times where the cats have gotten out and it's been rather difficult because cats are kind of stubborn. One time the cat actually bolted out in the front door and it was like -40 out. So the realtor takes off. She's chasing this cat down the street. So me and the potential buyer go into the home and leave the door open just a little bit. And sure enough, about 10 minutes later, that cat comes running back in the house because it's way too cold outside. Now, the thing with dogs, though, is they are very protective. And even though they could be a nice, friendly dog when the owner's there, they do act differently when there's just strangers in the house and the owner's not there. So, good idea to have the dogs caged up or take them with you. Now, if you have any documentation that is relevant, such as maintenance records, things you've purchased, things that you've done to upgrade the home, renovations or repairs, gather all those documents, leave them on the kitchen table or on the counter above the dishwasher. This way, the inspector can go through them, discuss them with a potential buyer, and some of this information may actually affect their buying decision. Now, before we go into the next section, I just want to say one more thing about having that documentation there. So, for example, it's an older home and you recently had the roof redone, but because it's wintertime, the inspector can't inspect the roof. So having that documentation there shows the potential buyer that the roof has been redone and it's something that they don't have to be concerned about. All right, let's move on to the whole tidy up section. Now, I know it takes a lot of work to keep a house clean while you're showing the home, and this can go on for weeks when you're showing the home or you're having open houses. So I know it can be a lot to ask you to keep the house tidy for the home inspection, but it generally does impress the potential buyer more when the house looks really good. The other thing is, if you can't do that, at a minimum, at least flush the toilets and empty the garbage cans. Now, appliances also need to be inspected, so they need to have, the materials cleared from around them, any storage, garbage, anything like that that's around the furnace, the hot water tank, electrical panel, all that needs to be moved. Now, this is something that I've seen a few times. Don't put anything inside the stove or the dishwasher or the washer or the dryer that's going to cause a problem. Like, you don't want to take your coffee maker, your Keurig, and put it in the dishwasher so that the countertop looks nice and clean for the inspection. If the inspector doesn't catch it and turns the dishwasher on, there's going to be a problem. The same with an oven. Don't put plastic stuff in the oven, anything that's going to melt, because the inspector is going to need to test the oven or not test it if you put too much stuff in there. The weirdest one I've ever seen is somebody put all of their spices into the dishwasher. And luckily, it didn't turn it on, but I mean, that would have been a real mess. And lastly, don't leave a meal cooking in the oven. The inspector is going to want to test the oven, and if you got something cooking in there and he messes up your timer or messes up your temperature settings, it's not going to work out very good for anyone. Now, let's talk about known issues. So obviously you're the homeowner, you know a lot about the property. So if you have a list of known issues or recent repairs, you want to share that information with the inspector. Now, if there's anything that should not be tested, you need to inform your realtor ahead of time, and also leave a note for the inspector on the kitchen table or on the counter above the dishwasher. If it's something like a bathtub that shouldn't be tested, maybe leaving a note on the actual tub would be a good idea. I've ran into this a couple of times where people knew their bathtubs leaked and they didn't tell anyone. So when I tested the tub, I ended up with water coming through the ceiling to the floor below. Now, unfortunately, this makes a known problem worse, which could have easily been avoided with a note. Again, leave a note and contact a realtor because you want to cover your bases, right? The other thing is the home inspectors are not responsible for things that are already broken. So unfortunately, if you don't, inform them that the dishwasher is broken, they shouldn't run it, or they shouldn't turn this on or that on, and they do because they don't know, that's not their responsibility. Now let's talk about outside areas of the home. Make sure it's accessible as well. Trim bushes back, clear the debris from the yard, the deck, and the patio. Now, there's a couple of reasons for this. In wintertime, you want to shovel your walk and driveway prior to the inspection. Now, typically when a person's looking at buying a home, they get a short amount of time inside the property. So maybe 15 minutes to half an hour. Now, the inspection is much longer, so it gives them a lot more time to go and look at the property. And if, they can see the deck and the patio and the driveway and all that stuff, it just helps reassure them that they're making the right decision. Home safety is another thing. Go ahead and test all the smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors and make sure they're functional. If they don't work, either change the battery or put a new one in. If they do work and they have that annoying beep because the battery's going low, you want to go ahead and change that out. You don't want the whole inspection to be, this beeping sound from the smoke detector. It'll definitely put off the buyer. Check handrails to make sure they're attached properly and safe. In the winter, check for icy patches. You obviously don't want someone slipping and falling outside your home when they're coming or leaving. Now, here's the last thing we're going to go over is not coming back early. Now, respecting the time that the inspector has for the inspection is a really good idea. Now, this is a couple of things that are important here. This gives a potential buyer enough time to ask questions and clarify any areas of concern so that after the inspection, and once they get the report, they're able to move on. Now, if there's a bunch of questions that end up going back and forth to you because the inspection was kind of rushed at the end, then obviously that's not what you want, right? So just, don't come back early. All right, and that's a wrap, folks. We hope you found today's video on preparing your home for the home inspection day helpful and informative. Selling your home can be a stressful process, but with the right preparation and a little know-how, you can make it a whole lot easier. If you have questions or would like to share your own tips and experience, drop them in the comment sections below. Now, before you go, make sure you give us a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. That way you'll be the first to know when we release new content to help you on your home ownership journey. Thank you for joining us today, and the best of luck to you in selling your home. We'll see you in the next one.